Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Ascend Masterclass today. So excited for this special edition and masterclass that we're going to have with so many of you amazing leaders. And wow, you guys are in for a special treat. But before we dive in, I would be remiss if I didn't take some time to honor the day and honor all of our U.S. veterans. Today is U.S. Veterans Day. And as someone who proudly served in the United States Marine Corps, spent over 25 years in this country, this day carries a very deep weight for me. Today, I think of my father, who I got the opportunity to spend with yesterday. He's also a Marine Corps veteran, Vietnam veteran at that. And to all the men and women who have worn the uniform with integrity, with courage and sacrifice, and to every veteran that's out there watching today, we want to thank you and simply remind everybody that, freedom isn't free, right? And neither is success. And both are earned with a high dedication to commitment, to discipline, and to service beyond ourselves. And today we're going to be able to bridge this conversation for you guys. So I'm very, very excited. But let's talk about that really quick. I want to talk to you guys briefly before I bring in our honorable guest today. I want to talk to you guys about the mindset behind that. It had me thinking yesterday as I was preparing for this class about, the Marine Corps mindset. And even though it was over 20 years that I was in the Marine Corps, it had me thinking about the tie-in into real estate and what drives success, right? And so when I was in the Marine Corps, we were constantly taught to adapt, to overcome, to complete missions, and really develop this no excuse kind of mentality, right? And what I've noticed is that in this industry, our mission is slightly different, right? Our mission is our clients, our commitments, and also our calling. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So as we step into this class, as we think about how we're going to step into 2026, it's time, guys, to get back to the fundamentals and the principles that are going to create separation from average agent to the elite agents. So I want to share 3 principles that came to mind last night, and ones that really built foundation in the Marine Corps, in the military, but I completely think that they're applicable to how we can dominate real estate in our life as a whole. So the 3 principles that I wanted to share with you, 3 nuggets today. The first was our faith, right? So in the Marine Corps, we eagle, globe, and anchor. So the anchor and the compass that comes forth in the military, and for many of those that are in the faith, is, aside from trusting our training, it's being able to trust our calling. And when you have a deep faith, a deep connection, you develop this clarity that even when the market feels uncertain, even when things are falling apart, it's a reminder that our assignment, that our purpose, that every house, every negotiation, every conversation that we have, we've been prepared for this because we trust in something greater than ourselves. So that is key point number 1. The second is discipline, right? Discipline. This is the anchor that keeps you like super sharp, super refined. It's what made us in the Marine Corps combat ready. And it really should be what makes top agents in your market ready. So in the structure, in your morning routines, in your development, your scheduling, all the important elements of a business framework, remember that discipline doesn't make your life essentially easier, but it definitely makes you stronger and more prepared so that you're able to respond, react, and develop accordingly, and it keeps you very, very proactive. So that was key point number 2 from me. And then lastly, faith without works, right? Faith without works doesn't work. So it's your work ethic, guys, right? That's the multiplier that is going to separate you from the pack. And in the field, it certainly was true, right? Marines, the reason why we were so successful is because we would outlast the mission by being present. In real estate, maybe it's you being the last in your market to remain disciplined in your journey, right? So the hard work will become your testimony. And it's proof that, we're not just waiting for opportunity. We're out there actually creating it, right? We're out there creating it. So when you work with purpose and you become the agent that people trust, know, and follow, your hard work, your discipline, and your faith will all come together in sync for you to be able to create separation, and be able to service people at the highest level. So when I think of these three principles, um, man, I was like thinking about, like, I just met this gentleman not too long ago, but he definitely embodies these three principles: this faith, discipline, a relentless work ethic. And I invited him to this class. It was a no brainer. I had the privilege to speak with him a few weeks ago in San Antonio, and man, guys, his message was so powerful. It was one of those talks that like just kind of like sticks to your heart, challenges your mindset, and makes you rethink about what's possible. So I developed a strong respect for this gentleman, and he's our guest speaker today. He's definitely a leader in the world of personal growth and performance. Coach Matt De La Cruz is the founder and CEO of the Winning Minds Group. He's a John Maxwell certified coach, teacher, and speaker. And he's trained under the legends, guys. He's trained under Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, and the legendary John Maxwell as well. He's spent over 2 decades mastering leadership, mindset, personal growth, and has inspired hundreds, if not thousands, of professionals to be able to rise to their highest potential. Today, we're blessed and honored to have him here to inspire us, to equip us, to empower us to reach our full potential and think about what is possible in 2026 and beyond. So please help me welcome my friend, my brother, and today's special guest, Coach Matt De La Cruz. Come on up, my brother.
Wonderful. Hey, Joseph. Thanks so much for the kind introduction. I appreciate that. So I'm excited to be able to share my message today. I think that the timing is right. And, it's interesting. I always tell my wife that, I've always found myself that I always seem to be in the right place at the right time. And she says, well, that's kind of ignorant. And I said, no, I'm serious. I always find myself in the right place at the right time. And I said, the challenge with it is that, especially when I pour into people, they don't realize that they're also in the right place at the right time. In fact, we always are. There's no such thing. I believe that there is no coincidence. And you mentioned the word faith, and that is, and you know that just like you and I, we're men of God, we're believers, and we're the ones that we put it in God's hands. And I think that every single day when each one of us that we surrender our lives to the Lord, this is where good things start happening. Now, it might not be the things that we want to happen, but it's the things that God wants us to happen because it's his plan, his will, his speed. And it took me years to realize and understand that when you surrender, then it's not my plan. It's not my will. This is meant to be this way. And people come into your life, they leave your life for a reason. If you let them serve you, they're going to be a gift from God to say, here, I'm putting someone in your life to put you down the right path because you're off path right now of where I want you to be. So those that are joining us today, I want you to just realize that you are in the right place at the right time. And for you to be able to grab a nugget or any of the message that I share with you today, again, understanding and identifying what our big purpose is, what is our why. But there's a lot of things that most of us don't realize as we go through these years that sometimes we never really see or understand. What is our why? What is our purpose? What are my God-given talents that I'm supposed to utilize to impact the lives of other people? But I want to kind of start off real quick because there's some of the people probably here have never heard my story. But, I grew up in California, in Orange County, Huntington Beach. I was a surfer. It was something that I was good at. And when going to school back then in high school, we had a surf class and it was zero first period. And being in Huntington Beach, we would have competition against different schools, Huntington Beach High School, Edison, Marina, and all these different schools. And we would have a surf meet. And by doing that, of course, and your passion is surfing, that was my passion. Now, when I look back on it, I realize what a passion is. Passion is something that you don't care what's going to happen. You're going to do it anyway because you just love what you do. And I love surfing. So, of course, if the waves were ever good, I never went back to class and neither did anybody else, including the The coach, the teacher, who was our construction teacher, Mr. Esther, he never went back, but the waves were good. You're staying out there and you're surfing and you're capturing it. You're in the moment. But anyway, so I wasn't a very good school student. Um, I couldn't sit in class. And I think now when you look back on it, most of us didn't realize if you had ADD or ADHD, which I had, never been diagnosed with it, but I know what my attention span is. But I never went back to class. And then eventually I never was graduating from these classes. I was failing in many of the classes because I never attended. So back in those days, we used to call it ditch school. And that's what I used to do with all the people I was hanging out with. But I dropped out of high school my junior year. I got kicked out of the house when I was 17. I grew up in a very abusive household. My father was an alcoholic. And those of you who have ever been around alcoholism or growing up in the household, you know it was tough. But he made it a point every single day to use me as a punching bag. It was a lot of verbal abuse. And the things that I look at today is I can heal the physical wounds, but the verbal abuse, still, even with the tonality of what he used to say to me, you know, I'm a loser. I was good for nothing. He didn't know why he had me. You know, that still just rings in my mind every single day. But I remember my 17th birthday. I remember vividly. I woke up that morning and he said, today you're an adult. You need to pack your stuff and move out of the house. So I looked at him. I said, where am I supposed to go? And he says, that's not my problem, but you need to be out by the end of the day. So I did what I was told, and I packed up my assets at the time, 2 surfboards, a wetsuit, sleeping bag, and my clothes, and I went to the beach. And I didn't know where else to go. So I'm living under the pier, sleeping on the beach in Huntington Beach, California. And back then we were called beach bums, you know, and I did that for about 14 months. But back then being a beach bum was pretty cool. If you're a beach bum in Huntington Beach, hey, you're cool. Today we call them homeless people. So they changed the name and identity a little bit. And now when I look back on it, and people always ask me, they say, Matt, you know, I feel so bad for you, what you had to go through, you growing up. I said, what are you talking about? It was probably one of the best days of my life. And they said, how could that be the best days of your life? I said, think about it. I'm 17 years old. I have beachfront property. I'm not paying any taxes because I don't have a job. I have no responsibilities because I had no relationships. And I said, I got to do what I wanted to do and I love to do every single day. I got to surf 2 or 3 times a day. I was smoking pot. I was partying like a rock star. I said, I had it made. And then when people look at it that way, the way I explain it to them, they say, wow, I guess it wasn't that bad. I said, I was free. I was free of everything. And so when they think of it that way, they go, wow, that's a different way of looking at it. Well, if you take my story, and I'm sure there might be people on the line right now in this class, they're saying, man, I went through something similar to that, because we all have different stories. But when you look back on it, here's what we've all in our lives, at least we had a choice. We got to play the victim or we got to play the victor. And me growing up back then, I look back on it and I played the victor. I never played the victim. I never had poor little old me disease. I never had that. It was always about, you know what? How blessed am I? And here being today, Veterans Day, right? The people that served our country, the active military, even to this day, the men and women. I mean, again, freedom isn't free. I mean, someone had to pay the price for us to be able to sleep at night. And I look back on that and I'm saying, wow, what was I created for? And what everyone needs to realize and look at it this way, when God created us, he didn't create us to be mediocre. He created us to be and live a life of significance. And it wasn't just about us. It was about how many more people can we pour into? How many more people can we impact the lives of? So when I go back and I look at it, I went through those trials and tribulations on how I would handle it. But here's what the difference of it is I now get to live and I get to share my story and give other people hope, because there's power in the present right now when there's hope in the future. And the hope in the future is basically whatever we want it to be, but we have to let go and we got to quit forcing things. And we just got to let the natural flow go. When the natural flow goes, this is where we're operating at what we call peak performance. So I want to share with you today on what it takes. Number one, for how do we identify what our big purpose in life is? And maybe some of you right now, maybe you found it. I know right now that where I am in my life, I found it. I know that I took my mission statement, I took my vision statement, I took my purpose statement, I took my why, and I've combined it to one particular meaning, which is my purpose. But most of us, we need to know and understand, we got to realize that we're not going to actually ever get that opportunity to, let's just say, be who we want to be until we dig down deep, because we all have similar stories. We all have similar situations of things that we've done that we can do that, but also what we can do and how we can help other people. So let me share this screen with you. And if you want at any time, any of you guys want to take pictures of it, let us know and we'll stop. We'll slow it down for you in any way that we can. So I want to make sure that you get something from this as you invest your time with me today in Dream Chasers. So when we identify our big picture, what is our purpose though? So realize this, that we never really find our purpose until we go through the peaks and the valleys. I always like to use Psalm 23 verse 4, where it states that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. But when we look at the one key word in that verse is the word walk. We all face different circumstances, or I call them challenges. Other people call them problems. I call them challenges. And when we look at this valley that we're in, or let's just say the challenges in our lives, and we all have them. We can write a book on the challenges that we had in our life. But life doesn't ask for permission to challenge you. What it does is that it markets a shift if relationships change and people disappoint. So here's what we're saying. How do we know what our purpose in life is until we go through the different experiences? And here's what the experiences are. It's the good, the bad, the ugly. It's the wins, the losses, successes, and failures. I always tell people as we get close to bringing in the new year, don't just put 2025 and throw it in the garbage. We want to learn from it. All the experiences that we gathered up in the past 20 and 2025, 365 days, think about that. And we all had wins and losses, successes and failures. Let's gather those up and let's invest it into 2026. New you, new year. If you bring the old you into a new year, you'll probably have the same crappy year. So it isn't about market. It isn't about the shifting of the market. It's what we bring to it. What value do we bring to the marketplace? And that will determine basically whatever our income is going to be based on how many people that we serve. But so when we look at facing circumstances, every single one of you right now on this call, you face circumstances. How you handle it is completely up to you. And so as I walk you through this is going to help you identify what our actual purpose in life is. So the difference between those who win and those who worry, or winners and worriers, is how we respond. So some people are steering the ship, others are navigating the ship. As the captain of the ship, our goal is to navigate. That means we see farther than others and we see before others. We're anticipating what's coming our way. So when I look back on my life and I say, okay, I went through this phase and then I went through another phase, and then I look at, and I wrote a program called Turning Point, and there were turning points in my life. My turning points happened to be people. The first person I met was Zig Ziglar. I'm 18 or almost 18, and he was the one that kind of took a liking to me, but he would ask me tough questions, and he taught me about goal setting, and he taught me about attitude. Two things that he taught me: that he said, if you don't go back to school, then you really got to make sure that you work on your attitude, and you got to make sure that you have a goal. And he says, do you have a goal? I said, I do have a goal. I said, I just want to one day get a one-way ticket, and I want to fly to Hawaii, and I want to live on the North Shore, and I want to surf Bonsai Pipeline, Sunset Beach, Valdez Land, Gas Chambers, and I'm naming all these famous surf spots on the North Shore of Oahu. And he said, just a one-way ticket? I said, I'm going to be a beach bum in Hawaii. And if I can surf there and do what I'm doing here in Huntington Beach, then at least I'm doing it in paradise. And he says, okay, that's a nice goal. He says, did you write it down? I said, Zig, it's in my head. He said that it'll always stay in your head as a wish or a dream. So, in other words, as we get thrown all these different circumstances or challenges, how are we responding to them? Or are you a person that's reacting to them? So, if you look at either you're winning or winners or a worrier, and even the Bible says, right, don't worry, give it to me, hand it off to God. So if you ever get into that mental part to where you have doubt in your mind, you have worry in your mind, you have uncertainty in the mind. And my goodness, right now, where there's so much uncertainty, not only just in this country, but so much uncertainty in the world, we can't control any of that. But yet people like to put their time and energy into it, which why would you want to waste your time and energy on something you have zero control over? Only control what you can control. What can we control? We can control four things: how we think, how we feel, what we see, and what we do. Those are the four things only that we have 100% control over. But you can't control the outside conditions and circumstances. So, this first part of what we're trying to go through right now is I'm trying to show you that, hey, you can't define your purpose or your why in life until you learn how to overcome the obstacles and, of course, the circumstances and the challenges. So, what does it mean to ascend circumstances? It's to rise above your external situation. Again, the outside conditions and circumstance, the winds of circumstance blow upon us all. The difference is how you set your sail, which will determine the direction that you go. So either go with the doomsday people, the people that are doom and gloom, or you go with the people that are doing it right. These are the ones that are navigating through it. Everybody else is steering through it. It's not about steering through the day. It's about seeing the big picture and navigating and seeing the next month, the quarter, and of course, the year. So again, to ascend means to rise above the external situation. It's a mental, emotional, and a spiritual growth. So if you think about where we are right now, and I was just sharing with a group earlier before I got jumped on this call that someone had asked me, well, what do I do to prepare? I said, well, if we have 41 days left of the year, and then we go into the new year, then we're given 365 days. I'm taking the next 41 days, and what I'm doing is I'm preparing, and I take a notepad for each area of my life, 7: spiritual, family, career, financial, social, mental health. I take 7 pads, and I start writing down my goals of what I want to grow in 2026. So let's just say I might rotate career. And so I have 4 different companies. I have DLC Realty Group, I have the Winning Minds Group, I have DLC Coaching, and then I have Winning Minds Unlimited, which is my platform that goes out to globally. And I said, so I'm taking each one of those of what I want to do to grow in. Then I might have my health notepad, nutrition, what I want to do, lose weight, muscle mass, whatever. And I'm writing all of that down. And then I'll take my family goals. So I'll have 7 pads that could be filled. Some of them will have 6 things. Some of them have 20 things on it. And then what I do on Friday after Thanksgiving is I then will sort through them, and I'll say, I'm going to take the top 5 priorities in each one, if there's 5, and I'll just cross off the other ones. Then I get it down, and now I have about 35 to 40 different goals right now. And then I say, okay, which are the ones that I can do in the time period of 12 months? And then I went from maybe 35 to 40. Now I'm down to 23. Those 23 are now focused that with the time allotted, I can get those things done in the next 12 months. So this is kind of preparing. What I've learned is this: if you can keep your mind, body, and spirit in unison, congruent, all 3 operating at peak, this is what creates harmony. This is what creates fulfillment. And this is what creates joy. And those 3 things, when you can get that, that's when you're operating at the highest level. So think about that: mental, emotional, and spiritual growth, because it's all 3. It's interesting in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon talks about one of the 13 principles, and it talks about, it doesn't talk about God, but it talks about it talks about an infinite influence, or let's just say he's referring to God, but he doesn't use the word God. But it's interesting because that's where the spiritual part is. That's where the faith is, just like what Joseph talked about earlier. So You don't wait for better circumstances. You can become better with them. Again, life without a challenge, life without circumstances, it's the same thing that I know that I anticipate, even though I write down my goals for 2026 and I narrow it down to 23 that I'm going to accomplish. That is covering all 7 areas of my life. I already know, heck, if there was zero challenges, no circumstances, we would hit every goal that we set and we wrote down. But we have to be smart enough to know that it's not going to be that easy, because there's going to be some curveballs, there's going to be speed bumps, there's going to be roadblocks. And again, because that might not be the plan of what God has for us. So what we need to do is we got to say, all right, I'm going to become better with them. I'm going to be able to overcome them. And it's the same thing like in sales. If you're real estate, a buyer or seller wants to think it over, you know what to say. If they say if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, you know what to say. So we're already anticipating it. Because shame on the agent all of a sudden who thinks, oh, I'm not going to get any objections from this buyer or seller. You are. And if you're not getting them, then they're probably not very good buyers or sellers, clients to have. So we know it's inevitable. But again, we want to make sure that we're rising above all of these. You see, we're not made to live under your circumstances, but above them. So when we rise above them and we're looking down on them, it's kind of like when people use that as an example. Take a 5,000-foot view, 10,000-foot view of your business. And so now you're looking down on it. It's pretty much the same thing. Because again, if you go back and you keep track, and I've kept a journal like Jim Rohn taught me for 30 years, I kept a journal, because he says you want to be a buyer of empty books and you want to be the author of the book. So write down whether you get quotes, ideas, recommendations, whatever the case may be. You have those books that were once empty that are now full. And so for 30 years, I've accumulated all these journals that have all these nuggets in it. So that way, when I do pass and my time is gone, I leave my journals filled for my kids and my grandkids. So they got to see what my journey was. They got to see what I read. They got to see who were the mentors that mentored me and the people that changed my life. That's what you leave behind. But again, those are certain things that we don't realize now. But then again, we're gathering up all these experiences that all of a sudden now we get to share with other people, just like I get to share with you folks right now. So, when we look at, again, you're either responding to circumstances or challenges, or we're responding or we're reacting to circumstances and challenges. But what most people do is they stay stuck. And again, if we were to say, let me go back to Psalm 23, verse 4, and when it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the key word in that whole scripture is the word walk. It's walk. And so it doesn't say run, it doesn't say slither, it doesn't say jog, it doesn't say run. Here's what it says walk. And here's why, when most people, and it doesn't say stay in the valley, it says walk through the valley. Here's why. Every single one of us, when we look at it, when we're responding to a circumstance, a challenge, or something that could be that we have zero control over, our emotions start taking over, because we're emotional creatures. This is what we are as humans. We're very emotional. Alligators don't have any emotions. Lions don't have any emotions. Humans, we have emotions. And what they do is we let it run the show, especially if you're a people pleaser, especially if you don't like to let people down. Our emotions can get the best of us. So when we're looking at walking through the valley, here's what the walking is also means. It means take time to reflect. What am I to learn from this circumstance? What am I to learn from this valley? What am I to learn from the situation? And then what we do is they start talking about the problems. Well, I have a problem at home. I have a problem with an employee. I have a problem with a team lead. I have a problem. It's not about the problems. It's about what are the possibilities. So when you think about possibility thinking, which brings me into a topic that I was talking about earlier, was if you think about possibility thinking, if you always ask yourself the question, this is how I get unstuck. My question I ask myself is, Matt, is it possible? And every time you ask yourself the question, is it possible? Is it possible to make $1 million in a year? Yes. Is it possible to make $1 million in a month? Yes. Is it possible to make $1 million in a week? Yes. How about a day? Absolutely. So every time you ask yourself the question, is it possible? Your answer will always be yes. Think about that. It will always be yes. So that's how you get unstuck, which now will inspire you to move forward. It gets you unstuck. At least that's what it does for me. But what most people do is they don't live in, or think about possibility thinking. What they do is they live in realistic thinking. So you might be a realist. And a lot of people say that, right? When I speak with people and say, well, Matt, I'm just being a realist. So I said, a realist? So let me ask you three questions. Number one, does it exist? Does $1 million a day exist for somebody or you? Yes. Is it possible to make $1 million in a day? Yes. Is it out there waiting for you right now? Yes. That's realistic. If it exists, if it's possible and it's waiting for you, it's realistic. So quit thinking about the unrealistic part, because when you're saying you're a realist, you're being unrealistic. Here's what realistic thinking is, or realistic thinkers. It's about history. It's already happened. That's where they count on that because it's safe for them. Been there, done that. They know that. They don't know when they step outside their comfort zone. That's where they're taking the risk. That's where the charting the seas that have never been traveled, and that's where most people don't want to go. Well, that's where growth is. Even Maslow says, right? We either step into growth or we step back into safety. And what most of us are doing all the time is we're staying in the safe zone, our comfort zone. That's why people don't grow. I'm comfortable. You don't hear successful people saying that. Successful people don't say, I'm doing okay. Successful people don't say, I'm hanging in there. You don't hear people talk like that. And if you're hearing people talking like that, you're not with the right group. They're not going to lift you up. Again, they seek comfort instead of growth. Again, stay in my comfort zone. I'm doing okay. You see, when you react, you give the power to the circumstance. And when you respond, you take the power back. So I'm going to respond to it knowing that, okay, that's okay. It's short lived. It's not going to be very long. It's just like the seasons, right? Winter, spring, summer, fall. For 6,500 years of recorded human history, it's always been like that. And you're always going to have to transition from each season. So we pivot, we get prepared, we get ready. Now you're in California right now. I know Joseph is. I'm in San Antonio right now. We're getting a little cold spark right now. Still the high going to be 70. The low is like 37, which is good. It's refreshing for us in San Antonio. But when you go to the Midwest, you go to the East Coast, they're having an extreme change because they went from fall, the colors, to now they got their first snow, Chicago and Michigan, where I lived for 30 years. So they're getting their snow. So they're preparing salt trucks, shovels. They're preparing for it because they know what? They know that winter is coming or it's there. But the good thing about the seasons is simply this: they're temporary, because after winter comes spring. Spring is new life, new energy. We know that. It happens for 6,500 years of recorded human history. So when we look back on this and say, okay, I'm not going to get stuck. I know exactly where I'm going. But again, in order for us to ascend above our circumstances or rise above our circumstances, we need to understand and know there are 5 levels. And it's interesting because when I go through and I look at these 5 levels of ascending circumstances, this is not only helping us grow as individuals, but it's helping us define what our real purpose is in life. And I hope that you've got a grasp on it, or at least a good feeling of you're working towards your purpose. Maybe you don't have it clearly defined where it's an absolute. Um, I think when you get in your past your 40s, definitely in your 50s, you're getting really, really close. You know what your purpose and your why is. 60s for sure, no doubt about it. You're there, unless you're completely off whack. That's, you should know. But if you look at the roadmap to rise above, again, to ascend, there are 5 different levels. So level 1 is awareness. Level 2 is acceptance. And then level 3, of course, is adjustment, because we're going to adjust. And again, we adjust from season to season. We adjust from peak to valley. And then number 4 is action. And the last one is, of course, ascension. How we live above the line. This is where we're 10,000 feet looking down at our challenges. This is the same thing for each and every one of you. If you were to go through and you look at your story of your life, go back and you say, okay, in my teens, and we'll go from 13 to 16, 16 to 18, 18 to 21, 21 to 25. If we were to look at that, because each one of those are what I call adult milestones. Why are they milestones? Because at these certain ages, it had some meaning to us. 13 was a teenager. 16, we were driving. 18, we're adults, we're on our own. 21, we got to drink, even though most of us were drinking before 21. But legally, gambling, go to Vegas without a fake ID. And then 21 to 25, you're a quarter of a century. 25, then you can keep going on and on and on. But that first from 13 to 25 was a huge gap of what we learned in our life. It was setting the stage of our character. It was setting the foundation for us. So as we look back at these 5 levels, let's talk about that for a second. So in awareness, the level of awareness that we have, recognize your reaction. So notice when emotions are steering the wheel. We talked about that earlier. You can't steer every day. You got to make sure that we're navigating. We're the captains of our own ship. We're the captains of our own mind and our own thoughts. So we have to make sure that we are navigating it. We see before others and we see farther than others. And then, of course, the next one is awareness gives you control. So when we look at awareness, there's things that have always been there. That's why I always ask the question, does it exist? Absolutely. Is it waiting for you? Absolutely. So again, it's being aware that it's always been there. You just weren't ready to depart from your current emotional state or your current comfort zone. So watch how this works on the journey towards this. And I think if I can explain it to you in this way, what I kind of learned and how I look at it is we depart, we learn, we land, or we depart, we land, and we learn. And then we get to a certain area in our life. And then we depart, we learn, and we land. So it might be from 13 to 16. 16 to 18, we depart from 16 to then we land on 18 years old. And then we learn. And then from 18, we depart, then we land on 21. Then we learn, and so on and so forth. So we're constantly going. We're learning and we're growing. We're learning and we're growing, but we're departing and we're arriving, departing and arriving. So you can't change what you don't notice. But if I'm aware, it gives me control. I'm aware that everything that I wanted to be, do, or have is out there waiting for me. I just need to depart. But I can't depart because I don't have all the information I need, which is half of it's true. Sometimes you don't need to have all the information because you'll gather the information as you're going and you're moving forward. These are what the risk takers take. The ones who says, I got to make sure that I have all the information first before I take that first step. These people are the overthinkers. These are the people that are playing it safe. Heck, if you're going to be the risk taker, you'll figure out as you go. This is how I've been my whole life. Because again, people look back on it and say, boy, you sacrificed a lot. I said, I sacrificed everything. But you got to remember, I had nothing. So my everything was nothing. Of course I could sacrifice everything. I have nothing to lose. Some people that are not willing to give up what they have to get what they want. This is what happens to us. So if you were to do a mental exercise, think of one area right now that you've been reacting instead of responding to. What are you reacting to? You reacting to the economy, the government shutdown? What are you doing? You know, in response to that, this is where you can say, I'm not going to react to it because I have zero control on whether the government opens up or our government officials get their act together and start figuring it out and start opening out. Food banks are closed, SNAP and all that stuff. Here, let me respond to it. Let me go serve the people in my community and let me give them and help them with food. Let me help them have a good Thanksgiving. I can't control the government coming to a conclusion on that when we open it back up again. Heck, if 10% of the flights are on, I'm not flying right now. I mean, it doesn't make sense for me right now. So, but I'm not going to react to it. If I have to drive to Dallas instead of fly, I drive to Dallas. You know, what's 4.5 hours on it? I have to do it. But again, are you reacting or are you responding? Reacting drains your energy, so you don't want to get stuck doing that. Let's talk about the second one, acceptance. Stop resisting what is. As I talked about earlier, it is what it is. Resistance starts draining our energy. We start resisting this. We're trying to spend all this energy trying to figure it all out. Again, something we have zero control over. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up, it means understanding. And what you resist persists. So we talk about resisting, we talk about resentment, then we talk about revenge, and we see this cycle of this pattern going on. For some reason, it just happens in this country. I don't know. Everyone they're bored or something with their lives right now. So they go through and they start resisting, and then they start resentment, and then all of a sudden they start revenge. I mean, it's like wasted energy if you think about that. So it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. So that's an interesting statement though when you think about it. It's not happening to you because we automatically think it's happening to us, or we automatically think that even if a buyer or seller says no to us, or let's just say they don't want to work with us, we take it personal. But it's happening for you. There's a reason for it. And this is where faith has to come into play at a high level. But this is also where all of a sudden you got to believe that, hey, this is God's plan. There's a reason for it. There's that stumbling block. There's that speed bump. It's a roadblock ahead. You know what? It is what it is. I can't do nothing about it. I'm going to go with it. There's a reason for it. And the reason is for the greater good for me and my life. So when we go to the third one, adjustment, pivoting, I call it, right? We all are always making quick pivots on stuff. You got to change your perspective. How to reframe obstacles into opportunities. I remember when Tom Hopkins used to say that, when you go through what we call the attitudes towards failure, it's about, I never see failure as failure, but only as a learning experience. Or I never see failure as failure, but only as an opportunity to develop my sense of humor. There's always an opportunity out there for us to develop, to look at. Again, hard part about it is, how do we see the good in everything? Here's a better one. How do we see the good in everyone? Where when you can start learning to train, discipline, and condition the mind, the three things, train, discipline, condition your mind, that's when you'll start seeing the good in everything that comes your way, that happens to you. That's when you'll start seeing the good in everyone. A lot of people today, they just don't do that because they're quick to judge, they're quick to snap, or all of a sudden, it's not even the reality because we don't even know the whole story with many things. But we are quick to judge, quick to react. Ask empowering questions. What is this teaching me? I always ask myself, what am I to learn from this? I'm taking some time to reflect. What am I to learn from this? What is this teaching me? And then the higher your mindset, the smaller the problem. And when we talk about mindset, again, this comes back to how we think, how we feel, what we believe, and what we do. That is creating a high level of what our mindset is, because I'm going to think in the positive state. I'm going to feel at the highest level of joy and peace. And by the way, the really only way that you get true peace is from God. But then again, now that problem or that challenge is nothing. So then we go into action. So when we move with intention, there's two things. There's having good intentions, but then being intentional. And here's the difference of it. Having good intentions usually fall through the crack. When you live and when you're intentional or live a life of intentionality, now you live and you do with purpose. And there's a difference of that. So if I'm going to take action, I'm doing it intentionally. I'm not going to do it with intentions. I'm going to be intentional about it. In other words, I see the result that if I do this, this is what my result is. So action breaks paralysis. Don't wait to feel ready. There's a big one right there. And again, I mentioned that earlier, where everything has to feel perfect. It's got to be ready, aligned, and it's never going to be perfect. The best thing it is your equation of you in this challenge. You're going to make it better. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be good enough for all of a sudden for you have a chance to grow. Remember, it's always the root that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at the sprout. We're looking at the root. If that seed that you plant, if that seed that you're doing right now, and you're looking at it for growth, if it's taking root, you're in. Don't look at the sprout because you don't know how deep the root is. And then, of course, discipline, just as one of the words that Joseph mentioned earlier, is the discipline and the motivation. So remember, the motivation, the motion gets you going, but the habit will get you there. And so as we're moving through it, which is good, we're in motion. And then once we get through the motion, we want to get to the traction part. The traction's where it's digging in. We're digging in. We're getting good traction in that. And then after the traction, we go into momentum. So, my coaching business, one of my agents I was coaching prior before I jumped on the call here today, I always ask him, I said, where are you? What phase are you at? What stage are you in? Are you in track? Are you in motion, traction, or momentum? And they'll tell me, and that way I can help them. But I had to teach them though, because when you're in motion today. You're not in motion the next day. It compounds. But when you go into motion, after 30 days, you're in motion, doing the little things. Then you start getting traction. This is when you start getting callbacks. This is where you start getting some of your referrals after you get in that next 30 days. Now you're in the traction for 60 days. And then the last 30 days is when you're actually in momentum. So here's your goal, is wherever you are right now, whatever stage you're in, and there's the key, is the consistency. You want to go from motion to traction to momentum. If you can get to mighty momentum going into the first of the year, you're going to be in the top 5% ahead of everybody in the country. Because most people, what they do is they're waiting to the beginning of the year. Think about how many people right now that are already they're in that holiday mode. They've taken their foot off the gas pedal. That means there's less competition out there for you. Think about this. But now all of a sudden you're now in traction. People are not even in motion. They're in the holiday spirit, which is great. But if I want to take market share, I'm going to make sure that not going to waste a day in the next 41 days of 2025. I'm going to go from motion to traction. If I can get traction and go into momentum, go into the beginning of the year, I'm going to reap harvest. I'm going to reap the harvest. Why? Because I planted, I worked, I toiled, I did all the stuff prior when everyone else is sitting back and having fun, enjoying it. I'm going to do that too, but I don't need to do it for 2 months. I don't. Hey, I'm going to do it. Hey, Christmas. Hey, Christmas Eve. Hey, Thanksgiving. I'm getting serious after Thanksgiving, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm planning 2026. And people say, why do you take 3 days to plan your goals for 2026? I said, I take 3 days to plan 1 year of my life and my family's life. I mean, how much time do you spend? And some people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do planning their month or their life. And some people spend more time planning a wedding than they do their own marriage. So we have to be careful when we're actually focusing our time in. But when it comes to 2026 and it's a new year, I want to make sure I'm ready for it. And of course, level number 5 is ascension, when you live above the line. So above the line, ownership, focus, gratitude, growth. And I think when you can start focusing on, there's 4 things Ninja Selling talks about what you focus on expands. I kind of change it and I say, what you focus on, you bring life to. If you start focusing on an area in your life that's been dead, stale, just kind of like immobilized, start focusing on that area. You start bringing life to it. And then live by the 4 laws of focus. What you focus on grows. What you focus on seems real. What you focus on, you find. And what you focus on, you become. So when we look at those 4 laws of focus, and I call them the 4 laws of focus because if you can live within those laws, those are going to help you stay on path, stay on track. And then, of course, the gratitude is, how easy is it, right? It should be Veterans Day every day. It should be National Breast Cancer Month. In the month of October, everyone wears pink. They should wear pink every day. It's an everyday thing. And growth. Know and understand when you're in ascension mode, growth doesn't happen automatically. Growth doesn't happen accidentally. Growth only happens on purpose, intentional. And then above the line is that. Below the line is blame, excuses, emotions. And this is where people get stuck in that trap. They're blaming everybody. They're blaming the government. They're blaming interest rates. They're blaming Jerome Powell. They're blaming all this stuff. They're blaming Trump. Hey, there's no one to blame but yourself. because that doesn't dictate whether or not your business grows or not. Now, if they say call time out and it says we're restructuring the country, United States is now a socialistic country, everybody makes 50 grand a year, everybody gets a house this size, everyone gets to go get free groceries, then why even try? Why try when you can't even get there? Where the person who's not trying gets the same as me, it's the same thing. Everyone gets an A. Well, then why would I want to try? And the people that get D's, they're getting A's. They're not growing. So that's below the line. And of course, if you look at yourself as a leader, leaders live above the line always. It's our ownership. I take ownership. I stay focused with I live by the 4 laws of focus. Gratitude, I do my attitudes of gratitude, and my growth, I'm growing intentionally. So we take all of this, we rise above all the circumstances, all the challenges, and then once you become the master of yourself, you start mastering the circumstances, which now leads us to getting into the part of what is my destination? What is my big purpose? So it tests your discipline, not your destiny. When you control your mind, you control your momentum, and growth starts within. He who conquers himself is mighty. But when we talk about mastering or self-mastery is when we have 100%, and we learn this. So know this. This is what you need to be aware of. This. There's 4 things that we control 100% of. 4 things that God gave us the gift. Not everybody discovers it because not everybody kind of overlooks it. But these are the 4 things that we all have 100% control over. We control 100% of how we think, how we feel, what we see or believe, and then we control 100% of what we do. No one should have influence on how you think. They shouldn't influence you on how you feel. They shouldn't influence you on what you believe. And no one should have influence on what you do. We control 100% of that. So think about that. If we control 100% of how we think, how we feel, what we see, and what we do, I mean, how could we not become what we were meant to become? We don't, because a lot of us don't take the time to study and understand this is the gifts that I have. These are the gifts that were given to me. Now I can do whatever I want with them, for good or bad. And unfortunately, some people do it for bad. So as we get close to wrapping up, you got to remember a moment that I had to rise above was the day that I was asked to go to India to do a leadership class. And our missions minister pastor had asked me, would you want to go, would you like to go to India and do a leadership class for 500 men? And I said, well, what's their budget? And she said, it's a missions trip. And I said, well, that's a long flight. Are we flying first class? Because I don't want to sit in the back of the plane all the way to India. And she said, Matt, it's a missions trip. And I said, well, are we staying in at least a nice hotel, a nice JW Marriott, maybe the Ritz? What are we staying? And she goes, Matt, it's a missions trip. So I didn't get it. This is that. So talk about being selfish. Okay. This is the difference. And so I'm saying, well, let me go home and pray on it. I want to pray on it with my wife. And we did pray on it. And then here's where the Holy Spirit came to me and says, I have equipped you for the past 30 years to do this trip. And I'm saying, whoa. So I called Pastor Lisa. I said, yes, I'm in. She goes, well, it's going to cost you $2,500. I don't care. I'm in. I'm doing it. And I'm so glad I did it because it helped me realize here's the difference of it for all of you. And I teach a whole event on this. The 4 levels of growth is survival to stability to success to significant. All of our lives, most of us strive to become successful. On your journey towards success, we are so selfish. We neglect our family, our health, our spiritual. We neglect it all because we want success, whatever that may be. But in order to go from success to significance, you go from selfish on your journey to success to go from success to significance, you become selfless. So what I learned was me going to India. And by the way, I spoke on a Saturday to 500 men at this Christian church where Christianity, the word Jesus is illegal to use in India. They'll arrest you. We, as a missions trip, we flew under the radar to go through the slums to go spread the word and minister. And I got to minister and teach John Maxwell leadership to 500 men. And on that Saturday, and many of those men had walked 4 to 6 miles to come hear me speak. That's when I realized I know what my purpose is. My purpose, my why, my mission in life is to maximize my potential, adding value to others, wherever I am, wherever I go, every day of my life, and to live a life that matters. That's my big purpose. That's my why. And each one of you, you'll be able to go through it as well. So you need to sit down and you got to look at for you, you got to say, where can you rise? What about the circumstances that you have? So you can't always change the situation, but you can't always change your state of mind. Circumstance reveal who you are, not stop who you can become. That's when you'll start realizing. And when you ascend, everything around you rises with you. And it's a great quote to take with you. Right? When I ascend, when I rise above, everything else rises with me. I'm not going to stay at that status quo. I'm not going to stay at that mediocre. Some circumstances that are inevitable, but defeat is optional. Choose awareness, choose adjustment, choose action, because when you live above the line, you live on a higher level of purpose, power, and peace. And again, as I mentioned before, the true peace is when God gives you the peace. Take the time to identify your big purpose as you plan and set goals. Make sure they're aligned, your goals. They're not just materialistic. It should be also part of whatever your purpose in life is, because that's when it becomes congruent. The last thing I'm going to leave you guys with this. I do 10X coaching. It's a 12-week program, and it's $1,500 a month. What I wanted to do for anybody as a special for you, if you're interested in that, it would be $1,000, and that's an hour a week that we would do via Zoom. Or you can do the bi-monthly. It's $750 discounted to $500. And then some people just say, I just want to do 1 month with you. And these are people that are pretty much established already. And that's where they would end up being. It'd be $250. But if you're interested in that, scan that. I'll get you your information. Just say, hey, you could DM me. You could say, hey, Matt, I'm interested. I want to do something at the beginning of the year because I'm at this crossroads right now where I need help for someone to take me to that next level. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joe, and hopefully you guys got some nuggets.
Coach Matt, that was next level, my brother. Thank you so much, man. Your testimony was phenomenal, brother. And
Are you muted, Joe? Let me see.
test. Can you guys hear me? Test. Somebody drop an emoji if you can hear me. All right, they can hear me, Coach.
Yep.
All right, good stuff, Coach. Again, thank you so much. Just
Absolutely.
for pouring into this community, man. The wisdom, the heart, the fire that you shared is certainly something that I know we're better for. I was over here. I think I took 3 pages of notes, man. So,
Oh, good.
dude, some really great takeaways. I love the 4 points that you shared about control. Right, that was so much flame right there, my brother. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know we had a bunch of comments throughout the course of the call. To everybody that's watching, if Coach said something that just stirred excitement in you, maybe a fire, maybe something a spark that you want to kind of tap into a little further. I know Coach had shared how to connect with him. Coach, is there another way that they can be in flow with you, either through social media, or phone number, email, any other way they can contact you directly?
Yeah, if they want to, I'll give you my phone number is area code 248-249-7350. Or you can direct message me on Messenger. Just go to Matt De La Cruz and you can just DM me. And again, you can follow me on social media, MDLC Win. MDLC Win is my Instagram, or just follow me on Facebook, Matt De La Cruz.
Outstanding. Well, Coach, just on behalf of myself, our Dream Chaser community, all of you that were watching live on all the various social media platforms, or those of you that will watch this as it lives on YouTube, thank you, sir. We salute you. We're going to welcome you back to another call, another conversation. And you guys need to tap in with Coach De La Cruz for next level enlightenment in your lives. Thank you again, Coach. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you too. Thanks so much, Joseph. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Take care, my brother. All right, that was fire, guys. That was fire. I want to thank everybody for being on today's call and joining us live on these master classes. Coach Matt De La Cruz's testimony was absolutely next level. And we're going to continue to stay in momentum throughout the remainder of the year. Like Coach said, 41 days. We got to continue execution, and we are not done yet. So next week, guys, we are actually going to go live and direct in the city of Rancho Cucamonga. I am hosting the second annual Iconic Success 2-day business planning experience. We got the QR code right there in the screen. And this is where we're going to physically, in person, get a collective minds to be able to create structure as we build 2026 into clarity for our businesses. We're going to talk about systems. We're going to talk about an actual business plan for you guys to get focused. Last year, the testimonies were phenomenal. We had agents that went next level in their business, created a new framework, accountability, room full of agents that are hungry, thirsty, and ready to ascend, right? That was our today's topic, to ascend. So if that's something that you're excited about, you guys go ahead and scan that QR code there. And once again, I want to thank you guys for being on today's class. Thanks to Coach Matt De La Cruz for inspiring us to think bigger and to lead better. Remember, guys, awareness, acceptance, adjustment, and action. Keep climbing. Stay faithful. I'll see you guys next week in Rancho Cucamonga. You guys have an amazing day. Stay blessed out there. Enjoy your holiday. Take care.